The whistle echoed across the empty field as Ethan adjusted his cleats, his breath fogging in the cool evening air. The stadium lights flickered faintly above, casting long shadows over the damp grass. Practice was winding down, but Ethan stayed a few minutes longer, stretching while the rest of the team laughed and joked near the benches. Among them was Lucas, his teammate and longtime friend, who had a quiet confidence that drew people in without effort. Ethan often admired that about him, his calm presence, the way he made even the toughest drills seem manageable. As Ethan began jogging toward the goalposts for one last sprint, he noticed Lucas move awkwardly, favoring his right ankle. A sharp yelp cut through the murmurs of the team. In an instant, Ethan was at his side. "Lucas. Are you okay?" he asked, crouching down beside him. Lucas gritted his teeth, wincing. I think I twisted it," he admitted, his voice strained but trying to mask the pain. Ethan could see the tension in his shoulders, the faint tremor in his fingers. It wasn't just the injury, it was vulnerability, and it struck Ethan more deeply than he expected. "Don't try to stand," Ethan instructed gently. He supported Lucas under his arms, guiding him slowly to a bench. The stadium felt unusually quiet, the laughter and chatter of the team faded into the background. For a moment it was just the two of them, the cold wind brushing against their faces, and Ethan realized how much he cared, not just as a teammate, but as someone who genuinely wanted to protect Lucas. Coach Davis appeared quickly, concern written on his face. "What happened here?" he asked, kneeling beside them. Ethan explained, keeping his voice steady even as his heart thumped faster than the evening wind. Lucas's face reddened slightly, not from embarrassment, but from the intensity of Ethan's focus. Every careful movement, every word of reassurance, seemed to linger longer than it should have. The medic arrived shortly, checking Lucas's ankle. Ethan stayed close, offering a steadying hand whenever Lucas flinched. "I've got you," he murmured softly, almost to himself. Lucas gave him a brief, appreciative smile, one that seemed to convey more than simple thanks. That glance made Ethan's chest tighten in a way that confused him, a mixture of pride, worry, and something he couldn't quite name. Once Lucas was helped into crutches and guided toward the locker room, Ethan followed a few steps behind, feeling an unfamiliar ache. He wanted to ask questions, to make sure Lucas was all right, but words stuck in his throat. Instead, he found himself thinking about Ryan, his boyfriend, waiting at home. Would Ryan understand how he felt at that moment? Could he explain the rush of emotion that wasn't just concern, but a pull toward someone else? The thought made his stomach twist. Walking back to the empty field, Ethan replayed the incident in his mind. He recalled the subtle weight of Lucas leaning slightly toward him, the quiet way his eyes met Ethan's when he said thank you. The connection was fleeting, almost imperceptible to anyone else, yet it left a lingering warmth in Ethan's chest. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought. "It's just care. That's all it is," he muttered, though the words felt hollow. By the time Ethan reached the edge of the field, the last rays of sunlight had disappeared behind the bleachers, leaving only the cool glow of the stadium lights. He paused, looking back toward the locker room where Lucas had disappeared. A mixture of anticipation and guilt swirled inside him. What if this feeling didn't fade? What if helping Lucas was the start of something he wasn't prepared for? Ethan sighed, his hands in his pockets, and started the slow walk home. Every step echoed with thought, every shadow seemed to mirror the uncertainty growing inside him. For the first time, he realized that what began as a simple act of aid could lead him into uncharted emotional territory he wasn't sure he could navigate without consequence. And yet, there was a spark, a sense that something significant had shifted in the quiet of that practice field. Ethan didn't know what would come next, but he knew one thing: he couldn't ignore the pull he felt, and that pull would not let him rest easily. The next morning, the sun broke through the thin curtains, scattering light across the wooden floorboards. I woke up to the sound of laughter outside. Ryan and Noah were already up, joking as they packed snacks for the hike. For a moment, I thought about pretending to be asleep, but curiosity won. I joined them, still half dreaming of the night before, the firelight, Liam's quiet question, and the look in his eyes that refused to fade. Liam stood by the porch railing, sipping coffee. He looked peaceful, like someone who'd made peace with the world, or was trying to. When he noticed me, he smiled softly. "Sleep well?" "Not really," I admitted. "Too much thinking?" "Yeah," he said, glancing toward the forest. "Me too." The group decided to hike the ridge behind the cabin. The trail wound through tall pines and damp earth. Ryan led the way, pointing out landmarks from a map he barely glanced at. Emily followed close behind, occasionally snapping pictures for social media. Noah filled the silence with jokes. I stayed near the back, where Liam walked beside me. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it wasn't small talk. He asked about my art, about what I wanted to do with my life. I told him I painted when I could but hadn't shown my work to anyone, not even Ryan. "You should," Liam said, his voice low but sure. "People deserve to see how you see the world." The sincerity in his tone caught me off guard. When we reached the top, the view stretched endlessly, layers of green mountains rolling beneath a pale blue sky. Everyone took turns taking photos, laughing and teasing. Yet I noticed something in Ryan, an edge I hadn't seen before. He was unusually protective around Emily, especially when Liam got too close to the group. It was subtle, but there, a shadow beneath his charm. That evening, the weather turned colder. The group decided to stay indoors, huddling around the fireplace. Ryan and Emily bickered quietly about something. She wanted to leave early, he wanted to stay another night. The tension was obvious. Eventually, Ryan stormed outside to get some air. Emily disappeared into their room, leaving the rest of us in awkward silence. Noah mumbled something about needing a walk and followed Ryan, and just like that, it was only me and Liam again. The fire burned low, painting the room in flickering gold. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I stared into the flames, trying to read them, trying not to think about the way my heart sped up in his presence. Then Liam said quietly, "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" I turned toward him. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "Like, you're doing what everyone expects, but none of it feels like you." His words sank deep. "Yeah. I feel that all the time." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the fire. "I've spent so long pretending. Smiling when I didn't want to, saying things I didn't mean. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just stop pretending." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. I could feel his words pulling something loose inside me, something I'd locked away for years. "What would you do," I asked softly, "if you didn't have to pretend?" He looked at me then. Really looked. His expression was steady but vulnerable. "Maybe I'd start by telling the truth. That sometimes, the people who make us feel most alive are the ones we're not supposed to feel anything for." My breath caught. The fire cracked sharply, the sound echoing in the silence that followed. I didn't know what to say. My thoughts blurred, guilt, confusion, and an undeniable pull toward him. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I shouldn't have said that." I shook my head. "No. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. It was dangerous, because I felt it too. The night drew on, stretching longer than it should have. Eventually, he stood and walked toward the door. "I need some air," he murmured. I followed him without thinking. Outside, the forest was quiet, the air cold and sharp. The moonlight spilled across the clearing. We stood there for a long time, just breathing. Then, in the stillness, he said, "Ethan, there's something about you. Something that makes me feel seen." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was pounding too fast. When I finally looked up, his expression was full of hesitation and something else, honesty, but before I could find the courage to respond, a voice cut through the night. "Liam? Ethan?" It was Ryan. He stood near the cabin steps, eyes flicking between us. Confusion twisted into suspicion. He didn't say anything more, but the silence said enough. Liam stepped back immediately, his jaw tightening. I froze, guilt flooding through me even though nothing had happened, nothing, except everything unspoken. Ryan's gaze lingered, cold and sharp, before he turned away and slammed the door behind him. The moment shattered like glass. The fire inside me dimmed, replaced by the heavy weight of realization. Something had been crossed, not in action, but in meaning. And I knew, as I stood there under the moonlight, that nothing between us, or between me and my brother, would ever be the same again. The following week felt strangely quiet. The usual buzz of the office couldn't drown the silence that had grown between Ethan and Daniel. Their messages stopped. Their coffee breaks ended. It was as though the closeness that had quietly bloomed between them had suddenly wilted under the weight of unspoken feelings. Ethan tried to convince himself that this distance was good, necessary even. But when he saw Daniel walking through the corridor, composed and distant, it hurt more than he expected. Late Friday evening, while the rest of the staff had gone, Ethan stayed behind to finish a presentation. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the empty space. He didn't hear the office door open until Daniel spoke softly behind him. "You're still here," Daniel said. Ethan looked up, startled. Daniel stood in the doorway, no tie, no formal mask, just a man who looked tired of holding everything together. "I could say the same about you," Ethan replied quietly. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low. "I owe you an apology." Ethan frowned. "For what?" "For crossing a line I shouldn't have," Daniel said, meeting his eyes. "For letting you see a part of me that was never meant to surface at work. I wasn't fair to you." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You didn't do anything wrong. We just talked." Daniel gave a hollow smile. Talking can be dangerous when the wrong emotions hide behind the right words. A heavy pause settled between them. Outside, the city lights flickered through the windows like fading stars. Ethan could feel the tension rising, not from desire, but from everything unspoken. "I don't know what this is," Ethan admitted finally. "But it's made me question things I didn't plan to question." Daniel's voice trembled slightly. "You're not the only one." He turned away, pressing his hands against the desk. "I've spent years pretending to live a life that looked perfect from the outside. But when I'm around you, it feels like I stop pretending." Ethan's breath caught. "And what does that mean for you?" Daniel laughed softly, bitterly. "It means I've been living a lie. To my wife, to my friends, to myself. I thought I was protecting everyone by keeping things neat and proper. But all I've done is build walls I can't breathe behind." The confession landed like a stone in the silence. Ethan didn't move, afraid that any reaction might break the fragile honesty hanging in the air. "Daniel," he began, "you don't have to explain." "I do," Daniel interrupted gently. "Because you deserve clarity. And because I can't keep pretending I don't care about you." The words struck Ethan harder than he expected. There was no seduction in them, no hidden intention, just a confession born of exhaustion and truth. Ethan stepped closer but stopped a few feet away. "You're married," he said quietly. "Whatever you're feeling, it's complicated. And it can't go anywhere." Daniel nodded, eyes glistening under the office lights. "I know. That's why I'm telling you now, so you won't carry this weight. I'm the one who blurred the line, not you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The distance between them felt both unbearable and necessary. Finally, Daniel straightened his posture, the boss's composure returning. "I've decided to resign," he said calmly. "The board will announce it next week. I need time to figure out who I am outside of this building, outside of everything I've been hiding behind." Ethan's heart ached, though he forced a small nod. "Is that what you really want?" Daniel smiled faintly. "It's what I need." He picked up his coat and paused by the door. "You've reminded me that honesty still exists, Ethan. I forgot what that felt like." And then he was gone. Days passed. The office moved on, whispers of Daniel's resignation fading into new gossip. Ethan continued working, his routine unchanged but his perspective altered. He found himself replaying Daniel's words, not with regret, but with quiet understanding. A month later, an envelope arrived on his desk. Inside was a short note written in Daniel's familiar handwriting: "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Ethan read it twice before tucking it safely into his drawer. That night, as he walked out of the office, the city lights shimmered in the distance, soft and forgiving. He realized that some connections aren't meant to last, they're meant to awaken something within us. That he whispered into the cool night air, sometimes people don't enter our lives to stay, they come to remind us who we are. The wind carried his words away, and with it, the lingering ache of what could never be. Ethan smiled faintly, turned toward the empty street, and walked forward, not with regret, but with peace.